Okay, so we are live. Welcome to this first Hangout. Thanks for joining. You joined in as we speak here, so thanks. I had a spiritual thought, and a lot of times that'll be the scripture. Tonight it's a really short statement from Elder Michael. He said something that I read before, but it got me thinking. So he said, consecration enhances individuality. And I like that short thought. It's 3 words, but you know, we learn about and we're obedient in the gospel. We follow rules. We have an honor code in our lives. Anything we consecrate ourselves to, the world says, "Oh, you're holding yourself captive." But really, what we're doing is being an individual. It enhances our individuality. So, just a thought about consecrating our lives to good causes, especially the gospel, helps us be ourselves. Sweet thought for you tonight. Any thoughts on that? Any comments on that? So yeah, you can try muting the mic. I might need to go get. Go to get headphones. That might help. Let me go grab those. If you guys don't mind, I just have to go down the hall real quick.
Okay.
What's that?
While Travis does that, just Google Hangout etiquette. If you see your picture or icon pop up, that means that the microphone's picking you up. So if you see your picture pop up, that means your computer's generating background noise, so you'll have to mute your microphone until you solve that issue. So if our instructor's talking, it should just be his picture up on the screen. If you see yours pop up, it's you providing the feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Norman. And you can mute and unmute. So if you hold your mouse at the top of the screen, it brings up some icons. The one with the little microphone with the line, that is the mute button. So hopefully, are we still getting a lot of feedback?
Yeah, whoever L is, we're getting feedback from you. So if you could mute it.
Okay, perfect. Sounds better? Okay. So we're
slide your mouse over the screen, and in the top, there's a little microphone picture and a camera picture. All the way to the left, just click on the mute microphone. Click on it again.
There you go.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, Norman. I appreciate that. Yeah, sorry I jumped right in. I've gotten used to using this, and so it's good to intro to the etiquette discussion. Appreciate that. All right. Well, welcome. I've appreciated getting to know all of you through your intro videos and on the Google community. And I see some collaboration going on with the groups, establishing meeting times and kind of working through that. So how's that going? Any questions with the groups, group work, setting those things up?
I have a question.
Okay.
Am I correct in saying that the group work is going to be due on Mondays?
Yeah, for the most part. So there is midweek assignments, but usually those are quizzes. But the discussion leader assignment and any of your papers are going to be due Monday mornings, 8 a.m.
So would you suggest us meeting later in the week, like Thursday, Friday, or is it possible to get the work done even earlier?
Yeah, I've seen a majority of that where groups meet at least midweek or later in the week just to give time to kind of read through the case study for that week and the different material. Other groups have met earlier, just depends on how you want to coordinate it. But generally speaking, yeah, there's the case studies to read through, and you're also working on the doohickey assignment as you go. So.
I have a question on the doohickey.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find the worksheet that says fill out the worksheet from Harvard Mentor contact information from team member worksheet.
Oh, is that still in the instructions? Okay. Don't worry about that. That's an old item, so that was from a couple semesters ago where they had to fill out a form, but it's no longer relevant. So I will, course leader.
That's in number 3.
Week number 3?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So do we go ahead and still submit our answers to our team leader by Saturday? How does that work? Or is that for that whole thing that's deleted?
I'd have to look closer at it. Thank you for bringing that up. That's what answers does it have you submit?
It's the one that just describes the doohickey, and we have to submit our sheet to our team leader.
Oh, yeah, that's part of that old form.
Or that, okay.
Thank you for mentioning that. Sorry for the confusion.
Thank you.
There's
I appreciate
little
it.
adjustments that we make in the course every semester, and so sometimes stuff has remained that shouldn't, so I will pass that along.
Okay.
Yeah, Adam, there's a question about the weekly hangout. So yeah, we'll record this each week. So if you can't make it, you can watch the recording. Other questions? I think the biggest thing with your groups is just coordinating and doing your best to set up a consistent time where everyone can be there, so that you're all gathering and getting there. So on an individual level, make sure that you're being there with your group, and if in the case that you can't be there or you're traveling or certain things do come up at times, be sure you're communicating with your group. So. Okay, so as far as what you'll be doing in your group, so in your group you'll be discussing the content for that week. So there's usually a case study, and actually in this week's content we're learning about case studies, and it allows for discussion. So you're discussing as a group the case study, and there's prep assignment or prep material for that. There's the case itself, and then you'll see a discussion leader assignment. So each week there will be a discussion leader. There just needs to be one discussion leader per group per week. And the discussion leader will submit a discussion leader assignment. Each of you will only need to be a discussion leader twice. So if you're in a smaller group, if you've all done it twice, then you don't have to worry about the discussion leader assignment as we get later into the semester.
I have a question. Is the discussion for the hangout the same as the doohickey, or is it a different scenario?
Good question. So you can kind of divide up that time however you need to. So you're kind of doing both as you go. So some groups will, take the first half to discuss the content, and then the second half of their hangout to discuss the doohickey assignment. Not every week, but you're going to want to be working on that as you go. There's 4 different times where we turn that in. And that involves, what problems you're identifying, what solutions you're outlining, who's writing and collaborating on that. So I would say both. You know, a lot of time you should be able to get that done in one group meeting just because of the convenience of other groups kind of divide that out. So really up to your group to manage that how you would like. Doohickey, it's actually it's a paper that you're writing. It'll be a group paper, kind of a business format written paper, addressing problems surrounding the topics that we discuss throughout the semester. And I'm putting together some information and instruction for you that I'll have to you in the next day or two. And I also have an example paper, so gives you an idea of what to do. And then with your group meeting, good question, Melinda. Yeah, so you'll use the same Google format. You want to go ahead and hit the broadcast button. Once you hit broadcast, that's recording the meeting in your YouTube channel. After you're done, you just take the YouTube link and post it into our community page under your group. So. Any other group work questions, concerns?
Question, on the Hangouts, when we record them and we post them, do we do it under our group on the left-hand side where it says group 1, group 2, group 3? Do we click on that and then post it there instead of the main page?
Yeah, it'll all show up on the main page, but it puts it into your group page. So if you need to reference something in your group, you can click on it. So essentially, okay, we can see, you know, everybody group meeting, but the heading or the clicking on the group name keeps it a little more organized by group. That helps me as your instructor as well. Just kind of join in with you and see how you're doing, answer questions, get feedback too. Other questions? Let's see. So, yeah, you're meeting as a group. You're going through the material. Any questions about the doohickey paper itself? You may, and if you haven't gotten a chance to read into that yet, that's okay. Like I said, I'm going to get some more guidance for you out, and then get the example paper out to you here shortly. There's a couple questions here about the HR interview. Yeah, so your HR interview is due next week. The first part of it was just submitting the name of who you're interviewing. And then the next part is a brief write-up on how the interview went. And you can meet this week. The first required group meeting will be definitely for next week, because that's when we'll have our first case study and material that we're going over. We're going over a case called Army Crew. It's about teamwork. Very fascinating case. One of my favorites.
We did that in another class.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
All right. Norman's got the inside scoop.
I do. And I actually know what happened, which is kind of a weird thing you're not supposed to do with case studies. So.
Oh, you knew what happened while you were reading it?
No, what the result of what actually happened in real life.
Oh, gotcha.
Because they usually end the case in kind of a, hey, what does the guy do now? So, like I said, I know what the coach did, but I won't share that with anybody.
Well, maybe you can be the facilitator and ask the questions to make people think.
Okay.
It does have quite a fascinating ending to it, so enjoy it. It's a fun one. Yeah, so the case studies, I mean, if you're in the business side of things, you've probably done case studies before in other courses. Great way to learn, great way to discuss. We get to bring our own perspective and our own experiences and ideas into talking through solutions, making recommendations. and really thinking through issues. So that's what this allows us to do. So, you know, we want to, that's the purpose behind meeting together, is having that interaction so that we can really enhance the learning. Doohickeys, so we're learning through the case method, and then the Doohickeys assignments. Doohickeys is the name of a mock company. This case was written by vendors that developed this course, who I work with pretty closely, and it's a company with a lot of problems. I mean, it's a case, but if you've read through it, they've got a ton of problems. So we get to come in and be consultants for this company from an HR standpoint, identify key problems, and list out solutions, make recommendations, add details about implementation. We're doing a lot of thinking and consulting in this course. So it's a paper that you'll write a few times, but each paper is going to be different problems. Each paper has 3 problems with 4 solutions for each problem. So the first paper is due at the end of week 5. And I'll outline that. Like I said, I'll get an outline, but the first paper, for example, is going to go over, you know, what we've learned this week about leadership. So you want to have solutions surrounding topics of leadership, teamwork, performance management, things like that. You know, later down the road, you're going to see things. You're going to see things like benefits, but that's going to be for a later paper after we discuss, you know, benefits and compensation, for example. So it is fun. It's a considerable amount of work, but it creates a lot of opportunity to think through issues. And I have a couple semesters ago, I had a student that shared with me her experience with doohickeys. And, you know, she was skeptical. She's like, oh, at first I thought it was silly, you know, and I was just doing it to fulfill the assignments, and it sounded kind of outrageous and kind of blah, blah, blah. After she finished this course and graduated, she actually got a job, lo and behold, in a manufacturing environment. Got to work the first day, got shown where her office is. That was it. Didn't know where the break room was, didn't know where the restroom was. And they said, okay, here's all of our problems, get to work. And in a very real way, she said, I was working at Doohickeys. So if it seems silly, just kind of put yourself in that situation, or apply it to your current work situation or somewhere you've been, or file it away, because the principles we'll talk about will apply. And you've already kind of dug into the problems and talked about solutions and how to implement recommendations to make it better. And so she said, thank goodness for the Doohickey project. So it does have some relevance for sure. First paper is due end of week 5. I can't remember the exact date, but we're a couple weeks out from that. SHRM certification, Society for Human Resources. I'm just looking at questions in the chat, by the way. So Carrie's got a question about SHRM certification. So yeah, that's something that it's a professional certification. Especially if you go into human resources, that's something that you take an exam and you get certification credits for that. It's recognized in the field. So you'll see people in HR, they'll have after the name PHR or SPHR, which means Professional in Human Resources, or Senior Professional Human Resources. That means that they've gotten certified. So it just increases your relevance in the field of HR. So that's something that I'm working on. You have to study and take the exams and have some time behind you in the field to get that. So that's what they're referring to, Carrie. Well, so yeah, that's just kind of, I don't know, probably a rough overview of what we'll be doing in the course. Is there any other questions about the content of the course or how things go? Really like the, one of you noted the discussion with Elder Bednar. So kind of kick things off with thinking about leadership and talking about what leadership is and what it means, and hearing from Elder Bednar, his perspective. Do you guys know what his background was before his call to church service?
Wasn't he the BYU Idaho president?
He was, yep. So definitely led BYU Idaho through some huge transitions from a 2-year school to a 4-year college. But prior to that, he was in academics, but he was also a consultant. So he was a professor of organizational behavior, which is the broad picture version of human resources. So organizational strategy, organizational behavior, and business strategy. So he was a business mind, and so very much an expert in some of the things we're going to be learning about. So perfect that we have that interview to listen to him speak about leadership. He lived it, he taught it, he consulted big organizations about it, and now he's assisting and leading the global church. So definitely very well credentialed to speak about that. What did you think? Did you all get to read through or listen?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Okay.
Or listen to it.
It's all right. We're still in the middle of the week, so.
I had a chance to listen through it and watch his video. I usually don't like listening to any of his talks, but this one was very good.
A little more interactive, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's a longer one. It's about an hour. It's over an hour. So, but well worth the time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I have the link in the announcement for the video, but also a PDF version if you'd rather read it. So I was able to locate that a few semesters ago.
Yeah, I read the PDF version, so that was easier for me to pick up and get back to it later.
Well, good. Good. Yeah, I was glad to find out. If you're like me, I like to mark stuff up and reference later. So, what did you think about it, Norman?
Yeah, I really like when they can be interactive like that. About a month ago, we had a priesthood leadership conference with Elder Oaks, and he took about an hour and a half to answer questions. And yeah, it's really neat to be able to have them just kind of talk and address current issues and things with church leadership and some other things. So it's kind of a neat opportunity, but with the size of the church, I don't think it happens that often.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You got to spend some time with Elder Oaks.
Yeah. But the thing I liked about Elder Bednar's was just the integration of practical business and management principles with principles of the gospel. Like when he talked about the changeover at BYU Idaho, how each department he wasn't going to go to each department and tell them how to make that transition And he really said that they each had stewardship over that, and to rely on the Spirit for guidance and direction and how best to do that. So it's really unique. At one point in one business that I had, my office manager really liked that a lot of us were members of the church, and we'd have like devotionals and stuff in the morning. And it's really rare in business that you can integrate gospel principles and prayer and things like that with it. But when you can, it's a good opportunity.
Oh yeah, I agree 100% with that. It's because true principles are true in any setting, right? So we need to benefit from that. And Norman, when you were talking there, yeah, what a big task, right? President Hinckley calls you on the phone and says, Elder Bednar, we're changing into a 4-year school. And he really didn't get any further direction than that. Make it happen. I wonder what we could learn from that about leadership. What do you guys think about when, if you were to get an assignment like that and say, go for it? What should a leader do, and what would the Lord expect of us?
I think being a leader is all about taking what the Lord wants you to do. So it's not necessarily what other people want you to do, but it's what the Lord wants you to do.
Yeah, I think you're right. Getting, the end goal, and you have to sometimes figure out what you do in between. And a principle that comes to mind, agency, right? One of Elder Bednar's common talking points, being acted upon. Is that a leadership principle? I would say so. And that's one of the things that we face, I think, at work, in management, definitely in HR, we face that. We face it as parents. The question of, hey, when should I step in? Stay back. And that's an act of agency, and we get to refine that as we go. Yet act and not act, be acted upon. Carrie pointed something out from Elder Bednar. What you do, he said leadership is not about what you do, it's about what you leave. And then Carrie says training is important. So what's he saying there? Let's expand upon that. Leadership is about what you do, or isn't about what you do, it's about what you leave.
I think it goes with how people look up to you. So, for instance, like President Hinckley, he was a leader. He's passed away since then, and he's left a legacy. We all refer back to what he said and all the other prophets and what they say. So it's not necessarily what you do right now, but it'll affect the years to come.
Yeah, and how it affects the lives of others. Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts?
I have a thought on that. It's always brought up as I've been growing up is when you're in a leadership position, you always need to be preparing the next person in line for when you're gone. Actively helping others to become leaders who can take your spot later on.
I love it. Thanks, Adam. Feels a little bit counterintuitive. Train your replacement, right? It's like, wait, that's my job, but train your replacement. Yeah, it's a big deal. Lots of good thoughts. Let's see. Lorinda said, loved how he asked everyone to pray and keep working in their own capacity. Talked about capacity a lot. Competency, capacity. We all have capacity. It's about how we get the best out of that with everybody. And leadership and how we insert our influence into the efforts of others. Delegation. Ooh, we like that word. We know that word in the church. Do we use it enough? Nope. I wish. So why do we struggle with that? Why do we want it so bad, and why do we struggle with it? I was just reading your statements in the chat, by the way. Somebody said nope. Yeah, we want it done right. Yeah, we want it done right, so we'd just rather do it ourselves. We never do that, right?
I think there's always the thing of where your boss or the person over you wants you to do something because he doesn't want to do it, though.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think of it that way. Delegating the less fun tasks to somebody else. Yeah. Adam, we don't want to inconvenience others. Definitely. All right, what did Kim say? Kim says, I serve on the Relief Society presidency, and we have a big problem with members of our ward accepting callings. So I think we as a presidency take on more just because it's easier than being told no. I like that. Because you might look bad. Yeah. Let's change the question just a bit. So why should we delegate?
Give others responsibility and the right to accomplish things on their own.
Yeah. Distribution of opportunity, right? Oh yeah, so you don't have to do it yourself. Okay, yeah, mention that one. But it also, Adam, good point, it gives us the ability to accomplish more as well.
Yeah, it can really be a force multiplier if you have leadership skills or you have abilities and you can get those to the people you work with, then they can take on those tasks and you can be innovative and learn new things and move in a different direction if you need to.
Yeah, I like it. Force multiplier, I like that phrase. Anybody have an example of delegation? So maybe an example of when delegation helped you, when something was delegated to you, or an example of when it was hard for you to delegate, but you did it anyway. Teaches us to be flexible and learn to accept people not being perfect. Yeah. Trying to think of examples. I know there's a lot of opportunity for delegation. If you think of an example, let us know.
Well, I can think of one. We've been given a lot of direction that the bishops are to spend more time with the youth, or pretty much primarily with the youth, and they really want the priesthood presidencies and Relief Society to basically take care of all the adults. But I think in the church, there's a tendency among the adults to want to go and counsel with the bishop rather than their high priest group leader. And so in that way, there's kind of a cultural or structural impediment to truly delegating the way the church leaders want us to do in a ward.
Okay. So yeah, culture gets in there. Kind of the way we've done things traditionally gets in there. Current mindsets, that can be some barriers. And, you know, I would agree. We commonly think, yeah, I've got to counsel with my bishop, but we also have other priesthood leaders that we can lean upon for certain things. It's a good point. Overcoming culture, and yeah, just to put a plug in for culture, it's hard to change culture quickly. So think about that throughout the semester. Culture and kind of the mindset of how things are currently done. How do we change that? Carrie's got example about expectations. So maybe expectations aren't clear. That's a big one. I think about a time, so a couple years ago, my wife and I were living on site of a storage unit facility. So there was a house that we lived on, and then the storage units were on site. So it was our responsibility to manage that office, the day-to-day interactions with the customers, and then also keep all the storage units clean and taken care of. So after a few months, the owner would come by once in a while, and at one point he was just frustrated with the quality of our work. We were simply doing what we were trained to do by the previous tenants, you know, keep things swept out, keep them clean. But the owner had a higher set of expectations. Problem occurred there that we didn't know that. And so it created frustration. So setting clear expectations is a huge deal, especially if you're a manager. You know, you want something done, you've got to spell it out, you've got to be clear on what you need, and then let people go with it and give them feedback as you go along. So it is frustrating to be in a situation where you're delegated tasks, but you don't have clear expectations. So we've got to get in front of that and seek feedback. So just a thought for you, from my vantage point on delegation, principles or root causes of trouble with delegation is trust. Delegation takes trust, right? So extending that trust to others takes trust to do. But if you study the concept of trust, there's a book out there called The Speed of Trust, actually, by Covey Jr., Stephen Covey Jr. The speed of trust. As we extend that trust and infuse trust into our organizations, stuff goes faster. Adam's read it. Good book, right? Cool. So think about trust. What builds trust? What destroys trust? How do you restore trust? And you know, that can apply to our workplace, that can apply in our homes. What does trust magnify? What does it speed up? Pretty fascinating topic. So, you know, thinking of delegation and leadership, how much does leadership involve trust? All right, so we have a question here from Carrie. Do you have a good example on how to give admonition? So help us understand what you mean by admonition. I think I know what you mean, but I want to make sure. When you're trying to give counsel to your employee, like corrective action, corrective counsel. Okay. Talk about that throughout the semester as well. We have a week where we'll discuss corrective action. So good question to be thinking about. I'm going to put that into your classmates' hands for a minute. What do you think? As far as leadership goes, sometimes we have to have tough conversations, right? Any advice from the group?
I think when correction is needed, or I guess where something needs to be addressed, for my company that I work for, my boss has never once yelled at me for no reason. Like, when I've done something wrong, he's talked to me about it. Like, he's got that relationship where he can just talk to me and say, hey, you know what, that was wrong. And then we'll talk about it and try to resolve the issue.
Okay, so be natural about it. Don't let emotions in there too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
So going off of that, it's not being a helicopter manager, you know, let people work things out. something needs to be addressed, they'll be able to trust you more as the manager because for themselves.
Letting them be agents, right? Back to that agency and that trust. Yep. 1 Minute Manager. Kim's referring us to the book 1 Minute Manager. Those conversations are called the 1 Minute Redirect. Addressing issues as you see them and not letting them build up or pile up. Okay? So being timely. Being timely and prompt. Yep. Deciding when to step in and when to stay back. It's a big deal.
Yeah, they also talk about, sandwiching sandwiching the correction in between a couple of, good points, building them up, giving them confidence.
Okay, so keeping some positive energy in there. Yeah, I think we're all interested in ourselves and we want to do well generally. So we need to know where we're doing well so that we can improve where we're not. I agree. It's an art, and I am thankful for, think of all the leaders that have influenced you, the good bosses that were also maybe some not so good bosses that I've worked with because they've helped me learn. Thankful for good church leaders, who all had different ways of approaching sometimes difficult things. So
I like what you said.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I like what you said about learning from the good bosses and the bad bosses. That was awesome. Got it.
We get to learn every day. Yeah. And back to Elder Bednar, leadership is about what you leave. And I know that the way I lead is very much influenced by how I've been led. So letting people grow. Lorinda says, I've had a real good manager who allowed us to figure things out, set us a good example of what she expected. Yep, a good leader needs to model the way. Those expectations, it's easier to have those corrective conversations too. Good. Well, there's so much you can jump into and pull out of these conversations. Leadership, it's one of those things. How do you define it? I think Elder Bednar really put forth some helpful guidance and information. It really is our influence, how we put together our influence and distribute that to others. So think about that through the semester. Leadership, transfuses itself into how we manage people, the decisions we make. It affects how, what we do, how we think about others, how we respond to difficult situations, knowing what our principles are and knowing what our values are. So, it's fascinating, and thankfully, in this course, we'll get to do a lot of what Norman mentioned about infusing business situations with gospel truths. And so tonight we've talked about agency, acting and not being acted upon. We've talked about trust, which involves faith and belief and all those things that we do spiritually. And we've talked about extending that trust to others and helping others. So good discussion. I appreciate your comments. We're all full of experiences and have lots of good examples. Any other thoughts that you're itching to share? I'm sorry, I'll quit swiveling my chair, by the way. That's probably driving you guys crazy. Well, good. I know that we can strengthen our impact, and whatever we're doing, we can draw upon the strength of the Lord. And I think it's important to remember. Lorinda, the thought that I shared at the beginning, since you didn't hear, was 3 words from Elder Maxwell, and it will be a good way to tie this up. But he said that consecration enhances individuality. And isn't a good leader very much an individual? You know, if we're consecrated to a cause, you know, if we're disciples of Jesus Christ, for example, we're going to be happy people. We're going to be able to use our unique influence that we all have for ourselves to benefit the lives of others. And so I think that's what the Lord expects of us wherever we go. And we have a lot of opportunity at home every day to put that in practice. So we'll finish up with that. Humility, yeah, good way to put it, Carrie. Humility. Great thoughts. Think about the principles. If there's something that really struck your mind this evening, kind of put it into practice. Make it a goal. If there's something that you need to work on, let's put it into practice. I know that for me, you guys talking about delegation and bringing that up as reminded me of some opportunities I have in my day job to better delegate. So, and be humble and do it and trust. That's kind of how these discussions are formatted. I really like to draw discussion out of you, and I don't necessarily like to go over everything that we're already reading with your groups, but I like to talk about the principles and talk about the application and then bring the gospel into it. So hope that works for you. If you have feedback for me, let me know. If there's things that you would like to see in these meetings. And I also, you know, I always try to stay under an hour. I respect you guys' time. You're all busy. So happy to meet with you all. I'm excited for the semester. You guys are already well engaged, so I appreciate your hard work already. It's a great. Any questions before we go? Okay, well, I will have some information out, like I said, in the next 24 to 48 hours about the doohickeys papers. We'll get you an example paper. Obviously, you don't want to copy from the example paper, but a big hint, if you use the format of that paper, it's going to go a long way for you and be a good learning tool. The goal of it is to be a good learning tool. So thank you so much for your comments, participation, and we'll talk to you guys soon.